T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And welcome back to Rethink 2020. Mikey Singer, your host here, and I am joined by the CEO of Redstone Agency, Carly Silberstein, who will be doing an Ask Me Anything and a short presentation on digital and hybrid solutions. So without further ado, Carly.
Thanks so much, Mikey, and your entire team for inviting me to be here with all of you today. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. I know that virtual events are on the rise and you could be anywhere this morning. So I appreciate you tuning in and being with us this morning. So Mikey, thanks for that brief introduction. I just want to go through a few slides, but I will keep it very brief because I know the focus of this is on Ask Me Anything. But I just want to set the stage and let you know why I think I might be in a position to come to you to talk about virtual and hybrid event solutions. So as Mikey said, Carly Silberstein, CEO of Redstone Agency. We are a full service event and association management company. And over the past 6 months, we've really been working with our clients to transition all of their meetings and events and programs to the virtual space. And we've also been very fortunate to work with new clients to do exactly the same thing. Back in 2016, I was one of the first and only 40 people in the world to earn PCMA's Digital Event Strategist certification. Back then, it was just my endeavor to continuously learn and to, be sharp and make sure that I was ahead of the curve, not knowing how valuable that certification would be starting in March 2020. This certification really centered on helping planners to gain the knowledge that they would need to plan virtual and hybrid meetings, how to monetize them, how to plan and prepare all the stakeholders to be a part of them, and how to produce them in terms of the production involved and some of the platform options that were out there then. And then fast forward March 2020, like I said, the certification couldn't be more valuable. So quickly, just before we jump into the Ask Me Anything, I just want to paint a picture and give you some food for thought before you guys put me in the hot seat and ask me anything. So this graph that you see on screen right now, this was published by our friends at the Event Manager blog. This is the change curve as applied to the event industry and how things have really unfolded in response to COVID-19. So in stage one, we see it's called information. So when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of information flowing and it was changing by the minute, coming from the government, from industry. We couldn't really make decisions decisively because the information from one moment to the next was vastly different. I think that a lot of people were in denial, possibly, about how severe the pandemic would be, how long it would last. And that's, I think, from my experience, really what we were seeing. Tons of information, people in denial, and not knowing what was going to unfold. Moving into stage two, the support. I think that a lot of people realizing that this thing had staying power and that it was going to continue to impact our industry so tremendously, people were getting really angry. From what we saw on the front line was people were angry about, the money, time, and effort that had gone into planning shows, events, meetings, and all of that work having to unravel, and all of the work to undo what had been done over the past several months and sometimes even years. Then you move into stage three, which is direction, that hated 2020 word of pivoting, people finding new direction or pivoting the direction that they had planned to take pre-March 2020. And then you have encouragement and acceptance and people settling in, realizing that they have to do something and, a sort of acceptance, if you will. So now just the last slide before we get into the Ask Me Anything, I just want to move from the change curve to this hierarchy here, which really hones in more specifically on what we're talking about today, and that's the virtual event technology and how it's morphed with us through this pandemic. So it's been said that the virtual event technology has accelerated more in the past 6 months than in the past 6 years. At the base of this screen here, you see Zoom. So back in March, Zoom and other similar video conferencing solutions like Teams or Google Hangouts, they were the go-to platform and the medium in which we were hosting our meetings and events. Leveraging their meeting or their webinar functionality, multiple breakout rooms, and even the screen sharing functionality. So back in March, that was all that anyone needed. It was still so new. Again, we didn't know how much staying power the pandemic would have, and that was quite all right. Moving up to the next tier is the virtual event technology, and that's really what we're using today. Hopin. It's a platform that we can do a little bit more with. So there are ways to engage with your audience. There's a virtual exhibit hall, if you will. Lots can be done on these. It's a step above Zoom, but it's a little bit more robust. Then on the next tier here, we see self-production. And that to me speaks to the tools and the resources available for myself, for any of you who are not, naturally content creators, the tools and the resources available for us to produce live or pre-recorded content. Think of the virtual backgrounds and how on the screen now you can see the MKEM branding, the microphone or the camera that you may choose to use, lighting, things like that. Those are considerations, in my opinion, of what goes into some self-production considerations. And then even still, the top tier there is high production. And some organizations are dedicating resources to high production. So think of, when we used to do shows or meetings and events in person, we would hire an AV supplier. They would set the stage, lighting, content, all of that. And even there is still a very big place for those suppliers in the virtual and the hybrid realm. So, hiring them to help produce some high quality content, and basically they're just, transitioning some of the spend that they had allocated for in-person AV into the virtual world. On screen here, you can see a collage of pictures of events that Redstone's been a part of over the past 6 months. So again, what started as simple Zoom meetings, just, two-way communication, or even just a talking head, similar to you see right now with an accompanying presentation, have quickly morphed into a lot more. So, elaborate, sometimes complex events on the screen here in the middle here, you can see that there's what I call a 3D platform, which is basically, you can have an avatar or be using the arrow keys to navigate a 3D trade show floor. That's obviously more complex. And then you have some of the 2D platforms, similar to the one, again, that we're on today, which is a Hopin. We've self-produced a lot of the content that we've supported our clients with, and we've also been asked to do a little bit more of the high production. So in the top left corner of my screen, you can see that there is a studio. So it's like a broadcast desk with multiple screens. So that's an event we're doing later this week. And we're actually going into studio. And we're going to be broadcasting from a studio to a remote audience using a virtual event platform, but the host and the subject matter experts will be on site at a studio. So we've, again, gone from, self-production on Zoom and then into the studio environment. We've also been tasked with having think of a news crew and the trucks that they use to be on location for whatever the coverage is. We've been asked by some other clients still to have those types of mobile broadcast trucks go to the home or the office of keynote speakers so that they can get a high production quality content created to stream into a virtual platform similar to the one that we're on today, and to make sure that that keynote speaker is well taken care of and well supported. So we've really seen, from Zoom type of events all the way to some more complex production and complex platforms like the 3D ones you see on screen there. In terms of creative solutions and engagement strategies, we also see that that's becoming more sophisticated, if you will, and people are getting really, really creative. We're taken through a breathing exercise. And so we've seen people hire other types of entertainment. So yoga instructors, meditation specialists, bartenders, I believe Mikey has one planned for a little bit later throughout this event. So we've seen that be requested of us from clients. We've also seen people trying to reimagine how to have breaks and meals together. We're not sitting around having a keynote presentation and breaking bread anymore together, but there are ways that we've seen people try to bring this to life or reimagine this in a virtual space. For example, sending out food delivery or grocery type of gift cards to the attendees' homes. We've even seen one where, foregoing the meal, but there's been a donation made to a food bank or some other type of food-related charity. Swag bags, everyone gets really excited to go to a conference and get the swag bag, or to be able to go onto the trade show floor and pick up those knickknacks from all of the suppliers and the vendors. So we've actually seen some clients assemble those types of bags or boxes and then again send them out to the attendees' homes. So we've come a long way from just a Zoom meeting in the beginning of March to some of the more elaborate, complex, and creative solutions we're seeing being executed today. It has been a time of tremendous change for our industry, for our company, and what planning an event or meeting or trade show really means. Most days are challenging. As someone who really thrives on lifelong learning, it's been a tremendous time to learn and adapt. And dare I even say it to this audience, but some days are fun and exciting. So I know that this realm is new to most. Virtual and hybrid meetings is new to most, us included, but I think that we are experiencing and learning together. So without further ado, I'd like to open the floor and give you the opportunity to ask me anything. All right, so the first question that I have is, what is the most creative event you have done so far? Well, it really depends on creative. I don't think that the word creative has just one definition. And I think that knowing where certain events were before they had to reiterate and turn them into virtual, having that baseline really plays into it. But we've been involved in a hobbyist trade show, if you will. It typically was an event that happened at it was a major convention open to the public. They used to see thousands and thousands of people come in over the multi-day event. And so, conceptualizing how that could be turned into a virtual event was really, 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 was really cool. And then on site, seeing how some of those vendors and suppliers activated in their booth and really took what used to be, a handshake type of approach, and how they, created video content or interacted virtually with their prospects. I think that one, so a hobbyist trade show, I would say that one's the most creative that we have been a part of to date. And that one was back in June. So still relatively soon or early on in the pandemic event planning cycle, I'd say. Another question coming in, these are great questions, is how is running a virtual event different than running a live event? So obviously the same principles apply. We're planners. We have contingency plans, all of our spreadsheets and documentation and all of that. But how is it different? I think that it's just so new. People have been going to conferences and trade shows for years and years. The planners, we have all been planning those types of shows for most, if not all, of our career. So I think that now it's also new on the planning side, but also on the speaker side, on the exhibitor side, on the attendee side. So I think that you have to be really thoughtful and go back to basics in terms of your communication plan. How are you as the planner going to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to equip each of those stakeholder groups with what they need to succeed and be successful in their role at that event? So, speakers, you could be possibly paying or not a really professional or a subject matter expert who is used to taking the stage and engaging a live audience of, thousands of people, or even just more of intimate groups, but doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to translate as well or as impactfully when sitting behind a screen. So you want to make sure that you are working with them, even if they're represented by, a speaker bureau. Again, being behind a screen might not be what they're so used to. And you want to make sure that the quality of content that you're giving to your audience is up there and is what they expected and is delivering value. And you also want to make sure that that speaker's feeling comfortable and confident. So again, it's going back to your communication plan and thinking through the tools and resources that you can give them to make the most of the experience. The next question, are you seeing a difference in what's important to guests now than it was 6 months ago? Absolutely. I think 6 months ago, like I said, people were fine with, Zoom meetings, and they were more okay. They were more tolerant to having hiccups, or, if the internet went down, or if, the screen share didn't work, and the tech glitches that come along with trial and error. But now I think that people's expectations are a little bit higher and they want a little bit more. So they want thoughtful design in that. I don't know about all of you, but I don't think that people want to sit behind a screen without a break or without something creative or unique for multiple days. So a lot of conferences that we used to host in person used to be multi-day conferences from, 8:30, 9 a.m. until 5. So the full workday, multiple concurrent sessions, keynote speakers, the meals, the social events, all of that. And as much as we can try our best to, take that exact agenda and replicate it online, I don't think that the people's attention span is there. And I don't know that that's going to be the most impactful. So I think that being really thoughtful in your meeting design and in what you are translating online needs to be thoughtful and strategic. And I think that people's expectations today versus March or April 2020, they have a little bit more, they expect a little bit more. The next question is, can you give us an example of how a hybrid event could look like? Sure. In my mind, a hybrid event is, there's a subset of the audience that is meeting in person, whether that's outdoors or indoors, wherever you might be located and whatever the restrictions allow for. And then there's still that remote audience. So, one moment. So I think that it could look like a variety of different things. Again, going back to my previous response, I think you have to be thoughtful in design, and you have to know who is attending in person and what their expectations are, and who is your remote audience and those expectations. So I think that you could have, a limited number of people in person, socially distanced and all of that. And then, you could be broadcasting out. The speaker could be there in person broadcasting out to a remote audience, or it could be a remote speaker broadcasting into that subset of participants. It could be that the subject matter expert can't travel and they're world renowned and they live in Australia, for example, but your audience is based here in Canada. So it could be that you're streaming the subject matter expert in. It could be that you are meeting in person and streaming out the subject matter expert to a larger, more wide-reaching audience on the remote end. I don't think this applies necessarily to this group, but of course there have been, life cycle events, weddings, graduations, and things like that, due to restrictions have had to be streamed out. So there's like a micro event, smaller wedding festivities, for example, taking place, and then people watching on a Zoom or some other streaming platform to be able to share in that celebration with family and friends, despite the limitations. Pre-COVID, hybrid events were happening, and not necessarily out of necessity, but it was a strategy to increase reach, to try to give people who haven't maybe attended in person an opportunity to explore and experience what the brand has to offer or what that specific event has to offer, in hopes of getting them to be in-person attendees futuristically. And so we've seen some really amazing things where, the event is happening. As we all know, events happen on the ground in person, but then, the remote audience would only get a subset of what that massive agenda looked like. So call it one or two or all of the keynote sessions. And then, what they also did in this example I'm referring to is they had a backstage or behind the scenes where there was a host that was speaking directly to that remote audience and, walking around that convention floor and interviewing, subject matter experts and exhibitors and attendees who were there. And you were giving the home audience a backstage look at other things that maybe even attendees on the ground weren't getting. So it was more of like an exclusive opportunity. But again, that was strategic and that was pre-planned, and it was trying to give the remote audience something valuable, unique. And I think the long-term play there was to get them to attend in person. But hybrid, there's just so much that you can do with it. And I think if you are, being strategic and thoughtful in your planning and in your meeting design, you can do a lot with it. That was a long answer, so I hope I gave you some things to think about. Okay. What is your favorite part of running a virtual event? What is your most hated part of running a virtual event? Great question. My favorite part of running virtual events is how collaborative it is. I want to go out on a limb and say that it almost takes more people, more of a team, to expertly execute a virtual event. There are no lines of sight. Like I'm thinking, even if you're in a massive convention center, in person, you have walkie-talkies, but you can all reference physical locations, and you can look around and do a 360, and you can probably see like if there's a fire that needs to be put out or what's happening on the main stage. Whereas here you're in virtual environments, and I can only see as far as this screen is allowing me to. But I don't know what's happening in all of the possible 250 exhibit booths, or what's happening in a breakout session that I'm not currently in. So I think that working with a team, cross-functional team, marketing, communications, tech experts, whatever that team looks like, I really love being able to collaborate and iterate and bounce ideas off that larger team. And my most hated part, I think it is no matter how much you plan, and it's the same in person, planners always plan A to Z, and we have a contingency plan for anything that might happen. But in a virtual event, despite all of that planning and contingencies and backups, you're only as good as, I want to say, your Wi-Fi connection, but then I would be leading you to believe that I don't encourage using an Ethernet cable, which I strongly do. But despite all the planning and all the strategizing and resources and time and money, all of that gets put into this, there are a few elements in this environment that are beyond your control, unfortunately. And I think that that's scary to all of us A-type show producers and planners. But the reality is we're only as good as our Ethernet cable. And I think that's the most hated part. Question is, what is your favorite new technology that you have started using when everything changed 6 months ago? My favorite technology. I don't know that I have a favorite, in all honesty. I think my answer to that would be that I'm so impressed with, the industry's ability to adapt and to be able to deliver and respond to the changing needs of organizations and planners based on the fact that this has staying power and that we've been in the situation now for 6 months. And like I mentioned, back to those change curves and to the hierarchy of, where we started back in March with Zoom, and now we're, getting more complex and needing different things. I think the event tech industry's ability to adapt and respond to those needs, despite the challenging times that we're in, I think that's been amazing. So there's a variety of different platforms, and I have some that I've used more than others, but I think that it really comes down to your individual use case, because there's hundreds of options out there. So I don't think I have a favorite, but I have spent a lot of time demoing platforms and tools, and so if you want to ask me specifically about any of those, I'm happy to answer. But I think my answer to this is that I'm just I'm so impressed with the industry's ability to adapt and come out and respond to the changing needs of organizations and planners. The next question, it's often discussed how the participants of online events are multi-generational. Do you have any advice on how to cater to Gen Xers versus Gen Zers in the virtual environment, who are known to have such different needs? That's a really great question. And I think that this almost levels the playing field. because you can offer different things. Again, if we're moving away from Zoom and we're using a platform, let's use Hopin as the example, because I know we all know it. We're all using it today. I think that you can have different things going on that cater to the different learning styles, different generations, different interests, and things like that. For example, there's different concurrent sessions, different sessions going on. And so you can have more sessions that, in subject matter or in the way that they're done, like the format, that cater to those different generational needs. So you could have like a round table where people can go on camera and collaborate and discuss openly, like a fireside chat. You can do more one-way conversation where people are speaking at each other. Also, I'm not sure if you checked out the expo area, but within those expo booths, there's, some are doing different formats, but that's like a component of the event that's open and accessible throughout the day. So I think that when you're talking about catering to the different needs, it's going back and having something that's a little bit more robust than a Zoom and having different components that are accessible. Maybe it's not open all day, or maybe it is open all day, but it's different types of components that are available and accessible. So I think that using these more robust, feature-rich platforms allows you to cater to the different generations. Again, back to an earlier answer I gave about having to really plan and think about giving your different stakeholder groups, speakers, attendees, sponsors, exhibitors, the tools that they need to succeed in this type of an environment. I think that really plays in there. So something we've done is given user guides. So a Gen Z might not need to have a tutorial about, using the Chrome browser and downloading the native app or what have you, but maybe a Gen X who isn't such a digital native, maybe they are, I'm not stereotyping, but it's giving people the option of those user guides so that if they need more information, they have it. And if they don't feel that they need it, they don't need to refer to it. But at least as a planner, you had the foresight and you were thoughtful in approach and you gave them the tools that they might need to succeed in the platform environment, in a new format of event, and all of that. So I think it's just being thoughtful and catering to the different learning styles, the different stakeholder groups, and the different generations that might be participating in your meeting. Let's see. Great questions. The next question I have here is, can you share some best practices in working with speakers and how you might help them get prepped for speaking at a virtual event? Yeah, definitely. So something that we've done across the board, again, previous answer, I mentioned that in some cases we've worked with speakers who are still being paid for the engagement. They're repped by a speaker bureau. They're really a subject matter expert. They have keynote as one of the roles that they often play. And again, not always is their in-person presentation translate as effectively online. So what we've done across the board, whether you're a paid speaker and do this as a living, or if you are just a subject matter expert and delivering your research project or whatever the case may be, we always do at least one demo with them of the platform so that they can see the back end of whatever platform is being selected. They can play around with the features. If they're going to intend on sharing their screen, they can go through that and see how it feels, how it looks, what they might need to change in terms of setup. Do they have a dual monitor? Are they using a webcam built into their computer? Are they using an external one? All of those types of things, we like to run through it with them. We typically do it with speakers on a one-on-one, unless they're part of a panel, and then everyone who will be part of that session, we bring them all together so that they can see how they all look on the screen amongst their colleagues individually when they're sharing their screen. So in terms of prepping speakers, I think the number one thing that we do is demoing it so they can get a sense of how, what it looks like, how it feels, and what's capable and what's possible using the platform. It's giving them the confidence and the comfort to do what they need to deliver a successful presentation. Let's see. Great question. Who do you look to as a thought leader in this space? So I did mention our friends at the Event Manager blog. So Julius Solaris, he is I would say definitely an event guru. He has a blog. They were recently purchased, I believe, by Skift. So I think that he is very level-headed. I think he does incredible research, and I think that he has his finger on the pulse and can, help all of us brainstorm and ideate and challenge ourselves and our ways of thinking. And he keeps a pretty real approach in terms of, where the industry is going, how long we might be in the situation, and I think he's an awesome resource. Someone I definitely look to and read all of his literature. Next question is, where do you see the space going in terms of digital events? So I don't have a crystal ball, and don't hold me to my answer, but I think that the world is our oyster. I certainly think that we'll be in this situation or some version of this work from home, meet from home, some version of this for the next 12 months. I'm not a medical professional, but even if restrictions are lifted, I have a hard time believing that organizations are going to be very quick to send their sales and marketing team back on the ground to meet in the same manner that we're used to. I also don't know everyone's comfort level in traveling and going to highly populated meetings and events. I could be wrong, but that's just my sense. So I think that the event tech industry is going to continue to innovate. We might see some. It already exists, but I think it will become a little bit more mainstream. Some, augmented reality, the way that virtual reality is used as it relates to meetings and events. I think we'll see a lot more of that. I also think that similar to the mind shift from the beginning, March 2020, where people were very much in denial and didn't know what kind of staying power the pandemic would have. I think that people are going to be, if they're not there yet, come around to incorporating at least some element of virtual into their meeting and event strategy, at least temporarily. So I think open-mindedness and more acceptance to this reality, I think, is what I see for the industry. What are your suggestions for creating engaging exhibitor booths at a virtual event? Would you ever get away from having this option? So creating engaging exhibitor booths. I got this question actually from a client last week, and I think that something that needs to be considered is the platform. And if you're coming at this and you are typically the sponsor or the exhibitor, and so you're involved at that level and not necessarily as the event organizer, I think that you have to have a conversation with the organization that's planning the event so that you can understand the robust or not capabilities of the selected platform. There are so many built-in features and functionality that it's great to know at the outset. So if you and your marketing team are creating video assets, if you don't already have them existing, or are is gamification built in and something that you can leverage to drive traffic to your booth. Or not, and that's fine. If not, then you have to do more of a you have to take the matters into your own hands, which I think is fine. But knowing that at the outset so that you can plan effective strategies around that is helpful. So things that you can do is make sure that people know that there can still be a two-way dialogue. It's not going to be over your display on the trade show floor per se, but even in Hopin. Especially in Hopin, you can go and you can see a booth and you can click on the attendee or the booth attendant, the staff person who's there, and you can engage in a one-on-one video chat. And, in Hopin again, you can have a group chat. So if there were 10 of us that flocked to that booth on the trade show floor, we all approach at the same time and we want to engage in a dialogue about your product or service or whatever, we can still have that face-to-face interaction. So I think that, communicating the features and functionality, or if you're taking a more grassroots approach and communicating with your distribution list and inviting them to come and see you on the trade show floor at this virtual event, I think it's letting them know that they can still get some semblance of what they're used to. By no means is it a handshake or a hug or that camaraderie that we're all used to in the industry, that I'm a hugger for better or for worse, and I would love nothing more to meet face to face. But I think that it's pulling out the elements of what can still be done that sembles the in person, despite being online. I think a big thing right now is that conceptually, some people are still not quite sure what these 2D or 3D platforms like a Hopin can do. They're still very much using Zoom as the baseline in their mind. And so when we say even virtual trade show, we're talking here about an engagement strategy around how to make your exhibit booth engaging. But even conceptually thinking about a virtual trade show or a virtual booth, some people are still at the level where unless you can show them what it looks like and what it can be, they have a hard time understanding what that even means. So the fact that the question here is about engagement strategy, that's wonderful that you're one step ahead of the curve, I think. The next question here is, how has your team dynamic changed on site when working virtual events? The team dynamic, anyone who knows Redstone, we pride ourselves on taking a team approach always. But I think, like I said, being in constant communication while operating from multiple different locations while executing one event in, multiple virtual environments. It could be one event, but you can be in an exhibit booth, in a breakout room, concurrent session, main stage, whatever the case may be. So I really think that keeping real-time communication between the team has been, the glue that holds it all together. So whether it's creating a WhatsApp chat that we can be off the platform and still communicating in real time, that's been something that we've done. And, making sure that everybody has each other's back. If they see something that's going awry in their area or their virtual area, making sure you're communicating that back to the event lead. And I would say communication. Just scrolling here, there's some great questions. Thanks, everybody.
I think we've gotten to most of them.
Okay.
You have a couple minutes left. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? Well, we've got our few minutes left.
Well, I want to thank you and everyone for tuning in today. This has been really great. I have produced a lot of virtual events, and as I mentioned, but I haven't, other than, internal Redstone webinar series that we did earlier on, I haven't actually been a behind the scenes speaker at any of these events yet. So I'm grateful for the opportunity and love the prep that we did. It goes back to, one of the questions that I got today. How do you prepare your speakers? So again, Mikey and I demoed the platform, made sure that from a speaker perspective that I was ready, that I knew what I would hear and see before we went live to broadcast. So I appreciate all the work and thoughtfulness that went into preparing me for this opportunity, and all of you for your incredible questions. It sounds like, despite the immense change that our industry is going through during this time and how challenging each day is, that people are open-minded and are, coming around to this the virtual opportunities and seeing them as such, as opportunities, despite all of our preference being to meet in person. And I think that I don't think this thing is going away overnight, but I do think that we will get back to in-person eventually. And I think that this is accelerating change and accelerating open-mindedness and the need to adapt. And when we do get back to that in-person, whatever that looks like, I really think that there will continue to be a space for the virtual platforms, event apps. And I think that they'll go hand in hand and they'll really support one another, and it won't be cannibalizing or replacing. It will really be in tandem, the virtual and in person, call it hybrid, whatever the new terminology is when we get there. But I really think that virtual is here to stay.
Yeah, and I think I can point to a recent stat that I read that said we have done 10 years of digital adoption in 6 months. So just like 10 years ago, smartphones weren't a big thing at a trade show and people didn't care about having Wi-Fi and things like that. Now it'd be crazy that you didn't have an Instagrammable moment at your B2C show. So you can see that by the time we get back to normal things, there will be a whole different world out there and new technologies that will be excitingly adding to these live events. So Carly, thank you so much for your time today. And if anyone's looking to contact Carly and her team, you can do so at the redstoneagency.ca. Another great thing, check out their Instagram. They're really active on social. I like a lot of their stuff. They make me look really bad on my social. So great work there. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.